Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Monday, November 10th, 2025. Kyle Anzalone joins us now. Kyle, it's a pleasure, my dear friend. Why the red carpet being rolled out, almost literally, for the former head in the White House for the former head of Al-Qaeda?
Yeah, Judge, this is really, really shocking. We have the new leader of Syria who now goes by Ahmed al-Shara, and that's what they'll call him today when he's with Donald Trump. But his real name is Abu Mohammed al-Jolani. That's the name he went by when he fought against U.S. troops in Iraq during the Iraq War for Al-Qaeda in Iraq. That was his name when he was in an American torture prison in Iraq, and when he was a deputy commander of the Islamic State before breaking off and actually founding the Al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria, the Al-Nusra Front, and he fought against the Syrian government, certainly with at least the indirect help, if not the direct support of the Americans and our allies in the Middle East, like Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and Qatar, and the Israelis as well. And he was able to exploit the power vacuum created by the U.S. chasing Bashar al-Assad from power in Damascus to seize power there, where his government has overseen the ethnic cleansing of multiple, or not ethnic cleansing, I should say, ethnic massacres of minority groups in Syria, minority sets, Alawites and Druze. Really disturbing stuff. And yet he is being welcomed in the White House because he isn't an Assad and he isn't allied with Russia and Iran, and that's all they care about in Washington.
How does Israel gain, if at all, from the adulation of this character in the White House?
Well, certainly Jolani seizing power in Damascus created a real power vacuum in Syria where Bashar al-Assad was no longer backed by Russia. And so Israel was given free reign over the skies of Syria, where they bombed 800 military bases last November, just pummeled Syria with multiple strikes. And they evaded a large swath and seized a large swath of southern Syria from the Israeli border, the Golan Heights, to now just outside the suburbs of Damascus. And so it's been a huge boon for Israel. And now you have people like the Israeli foreign minister, Gideon Saar, saying that, oh, look, Jolani and the other jihadists that he put in his administration are now an excuse for Israel to continue to attack Syria and to demand that Syria allow Israel to use Syrian airspace to bomb Iran. That's one of Israel's main demands of Syria. And so this is all about pressuring the Syrian government and incentivizing them with removing sanctions to allow Israel to retain some of their occupation in southern Syria and to be able to use Syrian territory to bomb Iran.
More from Donald Trump: Israel first, not America first. So let me get this straight. This is the first time I've heard this, Kyle. The Israelis are using the Trump administration to butter up al-Jolani, of whom there are pictures holding severed heads that he presumably did the severing. We can't show the pictures. In order to give Israel more land and airspace when it wants to attack Iran. The whole thing is done for Israel. Is that right?
Yes, and in Washington, they may mention some other issues like Jolani isn't allied with Russia in the way Assad is, and Jolani isn't as friendly with the Iranians as Assad was, or Hezbollah. But ultimately, it really is about Israel. They had the most to gain here. They're really exploiting the situation.
How long can al-Jolani last in office? I mean, live by the sword, die by the sword. He's probably got half the country loathing him. Number one. Number two, is he slaughtering Christians because they believe in Jesus Christ?
So I haven't, at least since he has rose to power in Damascus, I haven't read reports of him or his Islamists going around and slaughtering in particular Christians. Now, there have been some jihadists, apparently with the Islamic State, who conducted attacks against Christians in Damascus. And who knows that this is a situation where the government is looking the other way and allowing this to happen, or if they really had no role, no involvement in it at all. It does seem like they are trying to appeal to Washington and understand that they start killing Christians, that would probably be something that would really, really irritate Donald Trump in the wrong direction to go. So they've targeted other minority sets, the Alawites and the Druze, versus the Christians, who I think are just trying to keep a low profile so they don't end up getting slaughtered by the jihadists at this time. So it's really a mess. And look, if he retains and solidifies his control, then I do think the Christians had to worry more. And who knows how long he could stay in power. Turkey likes him in power. I think the Israelis like it, so they have an excuse to bomb Syria anytime they want, to make demands of Syria and to keep the Syrian government weak. Jolani is not a figure who's going to be welcomed in the global stage, and that's going to set Syria back. And that's what ultimately Israel wants, is weakened states around them, and Syria is in the weakest state they've ever been in.
One of the chatters writes in, Israel using an Al-Qaeda head-chopping Zionist puppet. 1 second, this just moved. Israel using an Al-Qaeda head-chopping Zionist puppet to do their bidding. Is anyone surprised?
Absolutely not.
Right. I mean, it's a little funny because the language is a bit humorous, but it's horrific when you think of it. And the Israeli history of slaughtering people makes one realize that we shouldn't be surprised at this. Does Turkey want this guy in there? Does Lebanon want this guy in there?
So I'm not sure about Lebanon. Turkey has backed Jolani and his militia, which he called Tahrir al-Sham, before taking power in Damascus. So I do think they feel they have a lot of influence. I'm sure Turkish intelligence is deeply embedded in the current Israeli government. The problem is the more influence Turkey has in Syria, the more Israel is going to want to exert their influence and control over Syria. So it's creating more of a conflict and tensions between Israel and Turkey at this point.
How soon do you think the Israelis will attack Iran? Is it the belief of the West that this is definitely on their schedule?
Yeah, I think at this point, Netanyahu's plans may be set back a little bit. I do think he really upset President Donald Trump when he tried to assassinate the Hamas leadership in Qatar. Importantly, failed, right? It's not just that he did something very provocative that set back Trump's negotiation peace process, that undermined Washington's relationship with Doha that's so important to Donald Trump, both personally and politically. But he failed to kill the Hamas leaders in the strikes on top of that. And there had already been some frustration expressed by Donald Trump when Netanyahu bombed Iran the first time on the eve of talks between the U.S. and Iranian officials that could have established a new nuclear agreement. So I think Netanyahu's probably delayed in his plan, but we're looking at a matter of months at this point. The Iranian government says they're not going to engage with the Americans as long as they're backing the Israelis in the Middle East. That doesn't look to change anytime soon. And the Iranians say they're going to rebuild their nuclear program even stronger than before. And both Netanyahu and Donald Trump have said that if Iran begins rebuilding its nuclear program, we're going to begin striking.
Have any Republicans been critical of Trump for hosting Anzalone in the White House?
Yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, was once thought to be kind of just a Trump faithful, has been almost the most critical Republican of Donald Trump during this administration. And she said, "What are you doing hosting a former Al-Qaeda leader on the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Marines? This is absolutely insulting to our country."
This full screen that we have up on the screen, is this what she wrote?
Yes.
All right, I will read it for the benefit of those who are receiving the show audio only. The new leader, this is from Marjorie Taylor Greene, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia. The new leader of Syria is a former Al-Qaeda terrorist wanted by our government, who is meeting with President Trump today at the White House on the U.S. Marines' 250th anniversary. That's today. He rose to power in December 2024. Sanctions were lifted off Syria in June, and many Christians and minority groups have been killed before and after the sanctions were lifted. Syria is the oldest home of Christianity outside of Israel. The Apostle St. Paul met Jesus on the road to Damascus, one of the most famous parts of the New Testament. I pray the persecution ends, not only in Syria, but all around the world. However, I would really like to see nonstop meetings at the White House on domestic policy, not foreign policy, and foreign countries' leaders. Wow.
And the post,
she has probably gotten under Trump's skin lately, but she really has been terrific on some of these issues. She's condemned Netanyahu, hasn't she?
yeah, and I just want to add, her post actually included the State Department wanted poster for Giuliani. And so, she really proves that he is a terrorist. And yeah, she has also broken with the rest of the Republicans on the Israel issue and has called Israel's atrocities in Gaza a genocide, which I think is very powerful for a Republican to say, and has been critical of the special relationship between the U.S. and Israel and tried to strip funds, that annual military aid that the U.S. gives to Israel from different legislation. So she's really been a very good voice on these issues.
Has Giuliani divided MAGA, or has this Giuliani visit not resonated with them?
Well, I think it was mostly flying under the radar. And, us in the independent media have been talking about it since it was announced, I think, about a week ago. But this really hadn't been brought up in Washington. Democrats aren't making a big deal out of it. And so this post from Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think, probably brought a lot more attention to this meeting than there otherwise would have been. And so I'm going to be very interested to see the reaction from MAGA now that they know this information from MTG.
Switch gears a little bit. Do you think that Trump is foolish enough to get the American military involved in a Vietnam War-like war in Venezuela?
Unfortunately, I do. Oftentimes, personnel is policy. Trump made Marco Rubio first his Secretary of State and then his National Security Advisor. And Marco Rubio is dead set on orchestrating regime changes in Latin America, not just Venezuela, but certainly Cuba would be on his list as well. But I think a lot of the southern Florida neocons really view Venezuela as key to the communist regime being able to remain in power in Cuba. And so they first want to overthrow Maduro in Venezuela. And while Trump, I think, would like to limit the U.S. military action in Venezuela, he seems to be getting suckered in more and more and more, where you've had, I believe, 20 boats destroyed in the Caribbean and the Pacific at this point, killing 76 people. Trump claims they're trafficking drugs. They're maybe trafficking drugs. There's unlikely to be trafficking drugs for a narco-terrorist cartel, and even less likely to be carrying fentanyl or any kind of drugs that are going to kill Americans. On top of that, this is all extrajudicial, unconstitutional killing that Trump is engaged in already. And I think he's going to ratchet it up as is shown to be ineffective in achieving his policy goals that it simply can't achieve, because it's not really looking at the root cause of the drug problem in the United States or the migration problems in Latin and South America.
Well, here's the man who calls himself the Secretary of War in a rather embarrassing 2 or 3 lines to Pentagon civilian and military leaders just 3 days ago. Chris, cut number 4.
We're not just buying something. We're solving life and death problems for our warfighters. We're not building for peacetime. We are pivoting the Pentagon and our industrial base to a wartime footing. Building for victory should our adversaries FAFO.
Why does he talk like he's a teenager? FAAFO. We all know what that means. It's, an acronym. I'll dumb it down. Fool around and find out. He probably uses another word that starts with F. I don't want to put a word in his mouth that he didn't use, but it seems highly immature and provocative. I don't know who could sit there and listen to it other than those whose jobs depended on it.
Right. No, this is really important that this man is not serious. He is not capable of running the U.S. I guess they call it now the Department of War, but the Pentagon. And, really, he was a talk show host before he got this job, and that's where he belongs. He's very good at looking in a suit and being mostly articulate in delivering a message. But that doesn't mean that you're capable of helping to craft U.S. foreign policy. Part of the reason why I'm so concerned Trump is going to end up in conflict in Venezuela is there's no offset to Marco Rubio in the administration. It should be the leader of the military that's standing up and saying that, look, all of my assessments say this is going to be an absolute train wreck, a quagmire. But Pete Hegseth doesn't have the cognitive capabilities to figure that out, and it's certainly not the ability to figure out how to explain that to Trump. And so Rubio is going to be in the driver's seat when it comes to foreign policy, particularly in Latin America.
What is the value judgment that Rubio makes? What animates him to hate these Latin American countries? Just because they're lefties?
Yeah, I think it's probably personal to him, I think he's of Cuban descent and wants to see regime change.
He's going to hate this if he even cares what we say. He's an anchor baby. His parents came here illegally, and he was born here. Under some of Trump's rules, we'd have to question whether he's even a valid citizen of the United States.
Right. Well, certainly, but at the same time, he grew up in that culture of the, neocon movement, but also with this particular focus on Latin America and wanting to conduct a regime change. And really, I think it's more about Cuba than even is Venezuela, but he sees Venezuela as an obstacle to being able to complete the regime change in Cuba, and is willing to at least weaken Maduro, if not completely remove him from power to facilitate all this.
And what about Colombia? They're going to go after Colombia next?
Maybe. It's hard to imagine. I think Colombia is a major non-NATO U.S. ally, which doesn't necessarily mean they're in a treaty with the U.S., but they do have a lot of American military equipment. So I'm guessing they would use other pressures to get Venezuela in line, maybe even going so far as to promise the Venezuelan people $20 billion that they vote for the right candidate during the next election, like we did in Argentina. So there's different ways we could exert pressure on Colombia, but we are carrying out strikes off of Colombia's coast now in international waters, but near Colombia, drug traffickers, we claim, alleged drug traffickers, we claim are from Colombia.
Who is the Latin American president whose visa was revoked by Rubio? Is that the president of Colombia?
I believe so. And he certainly is staunchly against what Netanyahu is doing in Israel and what the U.S. is trying to do in Venezuela, and, sees the U.S. intervention in South America as a problem. So I don't think the Trump administration likes him. They see him as a problem. I just don't think they're going to look to military solutions to him in power where they will with Maduro.
Who believes, well, let me restate this. Do you know any serious thinker who believes that this narco-terrorist nonsense that Trump and Hegseth and Rubio perpetrate about Maduro?
No, but that really says something about the people running this country, that there's no critical enough thinkers anywhere in Congress. I mean, I guess you have Rand Paul and Thomas Massie, Tim Kaine, Adam Schiff, who have stood up against this. But generally speaking, the Trump administration doesn't have any kind of justification for this. There's no evidence that they're actually killing drug traffickers. And certainly they're not killing anybody bringing fentanyl to the United States. Yet this isn't a major topic of conversation. The Democrats have tried to throw Trump in jail or impeach him over every questionably legal thing that he has done since 2015. And yet now, when he's doing something very clearly illegal, they largely have nothing to say about the matter. It's really disappointing.
It's a tragedy that the president can go on killing people and Congress does nothing about it. The courts don't have a case before them. I was cautiously optimistic, Kyle, that the two people who survived the killing attempt and then were kidnapped by the Navy and the DOJ for 2 days, Pam Bondi must have been pulling her hair out. She didn't know what the hell to do with them. If she arrested them, she'd need evidence. She had no evidence. There was no indictment. There was no charge. And if she let them go, she could be charged with kidnapping. So she deported them to El Salvador. El Salvador said, we don't want these people. They didn't do anything to us. We're going to send them home. They went home to Colombia. They can sue the Justice Department without ever coming back to the United States. They just need American lawyers to do it. They have claims for attempted murder and kidnapping against the president of the United States. It sounds absurd, but it's true.
Yeah, it is true. And I believe families in Afghanistan and maybe Iraq as well have tried to sue the United States. I think it would be very hard for them to make any kind of progress, especially as we just move further and further from any kind of real justice system or constitutional constraints of anything in this country.
Wow. Kyle, it's a pleasure to chat with you. I know we put this together without much notice, but it's a great conversation. I'm deeply grateful. Thank you. Who are you interviewing this week? Do you know yet? Or has that producer that works for you not put together your list yet?
I'm very excited. Today at 4:45 on the Kyle Anzalone show, I will be interviewing Larry Johnson. I've never spoken with him before. I have read him for years.
Who's Larry Johnson?
The former CIA analyst, of course, and a member of Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sandy, one of the most important groups in the United States, trying to speak to the president and let him know he is receiving false intelligence like they did on the war in Iraq, Syria, and now Venezuela.
Right. Larry's a great man and longtime friend and collaborator of mine, as you know. Have a great interview, and thank you very much for joining us, my dear friend. All the best to you.
Thank you, Judge.
Sure. Coming up tomorrow, Tuesday, at 8 in the morning, Ambassador Chaz Freeman. At 1 in the afternoon, Professor Glenn Deason. At 2 in the afternoon, Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski. At 3 in the afternoon, Professor Jeffrey Sachs. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.